So we're at the Mishnah on Chaf Aleph on Beis, continuing with the rules for Malachim. Layarba loy susim, alikadei markavasai. A melech cannot have horses. He can only have enough for his martial needs, his military needs. So you need for your chariots and for your cavalry. The kesev is of layarba loy ma'id alikadei litan Espanya. And as far as getting accumulating wealth, you can only get enough to pay for his army. Very libertarian view of what the government is supposed to do. But Kaisav loy sefer Torah lishmaya melech, additional type of rule, is he has to write a sefer Torah for himself. It's not a public thing. He has to write one for himself. When he goes out to a war, he takes the Sefer Torah with him. When he returns to the Mukham, he takes it with him. When he's sitting as a judge, it's with him. Meisiv he kenegdai. When he's Yesha B'din, it's with him. Meisiv he kenegdai. When he is Meisiv, like a saber, that's the way he used to eat, with relaxing and lying down. He keeps the Sefer Torah with him. It should be together with him and should read with it all the time, all the days of his life. The pasuk says he shouldn't have a surfeit of horses. Maybe he's not even allowed to have a large amount that he needs for his military, or parashav, for his I guess it means for his chariots and his riders. It says lo yarba loy susim lo einamar bava mabu kederich wasay parashav. He can't get what he needs for the army. Hamani mekayim susim. So what does it? So it says, if it says lo yarba loy susim, so what does it mean? If he's allowed to have for his army, susim habat lanim, he can't have extra susim just for show horses. He can have what he needs for fighting and not more. How do I know that even one extra one just for show is not allowed? The pasuk also used a lashon yachid. He shouldn't be marba even a single horse. Now that we've shown that even one extra sus is too much, what do we need the pasuk yarba susim? It's coming to say he's not just over when he has one extra, but every extra one is a separate lois essay. So tomorrow, time of the cost of loy. So tomorrow, what kind of havamina is? We're saying if the Torah wouldn't have said loy, I would have thought that he can't have loyar basusa means no horses at all. How could that be? It was necessary for fighting. Obviously, he has to be able to have the needs of fighting. Torah says loy to say that he's allowed to have a little buffer. He could have a few extra. He doesn't have to have the precise amount that he needs to fight. And then, if one breaks a leg, he's not going to have anything. He could have some extra. He's just not allowed to have for himself. But he can have even more than what's strictly necessary for military purposes. The Gemara continues, a very similar Gemara. He can only have enough money to pay for his troops. He shouldn't be marba kesevizov. Maybe even he can't have what he needs for the troops. Only for himself he can't accumulate, but he can accumulate for military purposes. Time of the Gazarach one of loy. It's like the Gemara, if it wouldn't have said loy, the Gemara says the same question. That seems like an absurd conclusion that we would have drawn, that he's not allowed to pay his troops. It's not loy tzricha la'avacha. The Gemara says no. What it's coming to tell you with loy, obviously we wouldn't have thought that he can't use money to pay for military needs, to pay for the troops. But this is to tell you that he's only asked to accumulate for himself, but he can't get extra, so he has a buffer. He has some extra, some flexibility. Now that we're saying when the Torah says Layarba Susim, Layarba Loy Susim, and the Kesev Zov Layarba Loy. So what about Layarba Loy Noshim? What is the Layarba Loy Noshim coming to tell you? L'yabel enoshem my drashta bay. So come on, lemuta hedyotis. It's coming to be mayit hedyotis. That means that only a king is not allowed to be mar b'noshim, but all of us on this Zoom are free to do so. The Torah has no problem with it. Rabbeinu Gershom Haragayla, he made a problem, but as far as the Gemara is concerned, it's not a problem. It's only for kings. Yehuda Rami, Ksivahi l'shloima arboim elef arvoi susim l'markavasai. Shloima had 40,000 rows of horses for riding. It says in another place, it has 4,000 rows of horses. Haketzad. The Gemara says, what it means to say is, it's tabelois, if he had 40,000 stables, kol echad ve'echad hayu by dal alafim arvei susim. Each one of the 40,000 stables had 4,000 rows of horses. If he had 4,000 stables, each one of the 4,000 had 40,000 rows of susim. It comes out the same amount, but it was 4 times 40. It was 160,000 rows of horses, whether it was 40,000 stables with less rows in each one, or 4,000 stables with more rows in each one. If Yitzchak Rami, that Kesef was not worth anything in the days of Shlomo. There was such richness, such wealth, that it was worth nothing. And Kesef Nechshav Yimei Shlomo Lumum, it was worth. So Ksiva Yidin Shlomo as a Kesef Yishlayim Kavanim. He gave out Kesef like stones. So stones, it has some value. So how can you say it was worth nothing? So Gemara like Kasha, Kan Kodim Shanosu Shlomes Baspari, Kan La'acha Shanosu Shlomes Baspari. One was before he married Baspari, and one was after. Rashi doesn't explain what this means, but the next Gemara is going to make clear that it was a avera. It wasn't whether it was a chait, but it wasn't the right thing for Shlomo to marry Pari. So one shot. I think the Mashal says that after he married Baspari, his standards got a little bit lower. He had a little bit more of a yearning for wealth, and therefore it took on a little bit of wealth. It took the silver had some value to Shlomo. Amar Rav Yitzchak, b'shal shenasa Shlomo as Baspari, when Shlomo married Baspari, Yored Gavriel came down, v'notz kana biyam, he placed a stake in the sea, v'helas shirtan, and it started to accumulate sediment, v'olav nimna krak gadol shebaraymi, and that's where Rome was built. The Vatican and Rome, it grew from that stick. That means that was the genesis of the downfall of the Bnei Yisrael, when Shlomo started to when he married Baspari. Why is it that the Torah doesn't explain its reasons? Why does the Torah give 613 mitzvahs? I don't know if they're all written in the Torah. Some of them are, I think, but in any case, we don't have the reasons for them. The Gemara says, there were 2 psukim that the tam of them were written. Nichshar behen gadol ha'olam, and Shlomo HaMelech was nichshar in both of them. Ksiv lo yarba lo nashim, and the pasuk says lo yarba lo nashim v'lo yasel levavei. The chash is that if a king will have too many wives, he's going to be nichshal. He's going to be drawn after them. Shlomo said, I'm very wise. I'm going to have extra wives, and it's not going to affect me. I'm going to be the exception. When Shlomo got old, his wives turned his heart. You see, he wasn't immune from the effects from the tam. Even a person, if the Torah says the tam, people will say the reason doesn't affect me. The Torah says the reason for the mitzvahs, people say it doesn't affect me. And you see, Shlomo was nichshel in that. The pasuk says the reason for not being mar besusim is because it's going to cause people to want to go back to Mitzrayim or get them involved in Mitzrayim. That's where susim came from. Shlomo said it's not going to happen to me. And it says that in the end, he ended up buying Vatala v'teitz Makov Mitzrayim b'sheish me'es kasef v'sus b'chamisha u'meya. So they went out to Mitzrayim in order to buy these horses. So you see, there was interaction with Mitzrayim. There was, to some sense, a return to Mitzrayim because of his involvement in horses. Zok the Gemara, because the Sefer Torah l'shma, Melech has to write a Sefer Torah for his own use. Tana, uvachli yisna b'shal avosav. He has to write a Sefer Torah, and he can't just take a inherited Sefer Torah and use that instead. Amar Rabba, Afa Pisha Hinichale Avosav LaAdam Sefer Torah Mitzvah Lachtam Mishalai. Rabba says every person who there's a mitzvah on every yid to write a Sefer Torah. Says even if he inherits a Sefer Torah, it's not sufficient. He has to write his own. Shenema va'ata kisvu lechem es hashira. Eisvei Abaya asks, how could you, Rabba, say there's a mitzvah on every yid, and every yid has to write for himself, but we have this pasuk that says that the Sefer Torah, we darshan it to mean that it's on a melech. So if the Torah has to tell you that a melech has to write it and he can't inherit it, so why would it, if every yid is like that, why did we need a special rule by the melech? So a melech is supposed to have two sifrei Torah. Kedetanya, because of is Mishnah, she writes Mishnah Torah Azois. The Mishnah Torah is a Mishana, is double. Kaisav l'shmai shtei Torahs. He writes two Torahs for himself. Acha shehi yitzas v'nechnas imai, one that he takes around with him. Acha shemenechas lebeis ginzav, one that he keeps in his storehouses. Oisa yitzas v'nechnas imai. I guess we could read in the parentheses. Oisa kamin kamiya v'tela bezarai. He makes it small and he hangs it around his arm. Shnemar shivisi Hashem l'negditavi ki minik balamit. Should be opposite me on my right. It should never stop. And this Sefer Torah that he carries around with him doesn't go with him into the wash house, and into the restroom. He should have it with him and should read from him. Only in a place that is appropriate for reading, not in a Beis HaMerchatz or Beis HaKisei. It was originally given to the Yidden, B'ksav Ivri. According to Mazutra, Ksav Ivri is a extinct script. This is talking about what Nekudas were used, not the actual words, but what letters were used. So it was this Ksav Ivri, which is Rashi says, Shel B'nei Ever Hanor. It was from not the Lashon Kodesh that we have, not the letters that we have, which is, as you're going to see, Lashon Ashurs. The Lashon HaKodesh, but it was originally in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew. Chazar v'nitten lahem b'mei Ezra b'ksav Ashuris v'Lashon Arami. When they came back b'mei Ezra, it switched to the Ksav Ashuris that we have, but it was also switched into Lashon Arami, into Aramaic. B'yard lahem Yisrael Ksav Ashuris v'Lashon HaKodesh. And then when they went back to Eretz Yisrael, it went back to Lashon Kodesh, but it remained Ksav Ashuris, which is our current, what we have currently. We have Ksav Ashuris, that's the name for the script that we use, the font or the letters that we use, and Lashon Kodesh, and what we have Lashon HaKodesh. V'hinitil hedyotzes Ksav Ivris v'Lashon Arami. And we left it over for the hedyot to have the Ksav Ivris and the Lashon Arami. Man hedyotzes and Rav Chizda Kusoi. That's referring to the Kusai, to the I think that's the Tzedukim, who still in Eretz Yisrael, there are still people who still use that. So my Ksav Ivris, what is this Ksav Ivris? Rav Chizda Ksav Libuna. It's a Ksav Libuna. This is the what we don't have. That's what was left for the Kusai. Rashi says it's Oisius Gedalis, like those that are used in Kamiyas and Mezuzahs. Some type of large script. Tanya, really, Ezra was Roy that the Torah should have been given through him. And Malik Kadmu Moshe, if it had not been given through Moshe. Moshe and Moshe went up to Hashem, but Ezra Who Ezra Allah mi Bavel. Ezra went up from Bavel. Ma Aliyah Makan Torah, Aliyah Malalon Torah. Just like the Aliyah when Moshe went up to the Har Sinai was to give the Torah, so too when Ezra went up to Eretz Yisrael, it was to reestablish the Torah at that time. He was commanded by Hashem to teach Chukim Mishpatim. But Ezra Goimer, Ezra Heichen Levavoi, Lidrash's Torah Hashem. Ezra prepared himself to seek out Hashem's Torah, the lasas, and to do what it says. The same lashon like by Moshe, to teach the Yid in the Chaykum Mishpat. Even though the Torah was not given through as it was changed. The language of it was changed. Because of Hanishtaven, the lashon that was changed, because of Aramis and Maturgam Aramis. This is talking about when they sent a ksav, igeres, to from the people in Eretz Yisrael who didn't want the Yidden to come, so they sent this with this other writing. So this is talking about the ksav Ashuri that Ezra changed the lashon of the I'm sorry, not the lashon, the script, the letters that we used from ksav Iris to ksav Ashuri. Uksiv like halon ksava lemikra pisha lohayda lemalka. And we have the same lashon by Belshazzar, that he had used the kalim of the Beis Hamikdash, and while he was in the middle of having his decadent party, the famous writing on the wall appeared. That's where the lashon, right? When the writing on the wall, which was forecasting his doom, but it was written in a lashon that they weren't able to read. So it was written in, they couldn't read the language to read it, and they didn't understand the interpretation. To tell it to the king. A writing that was, so this is from the fact that it was written in this new lashon, that shows you that it was also, again, that Ezra, this is the new lashon that Ezra changed to, lashon Ashuris. And we say a Mishnah Terazai, it's Kasav HaRoy Lishtanis. It's a ksav that will be changed. The lashon Mishnah means to change, so it's something that's going to be changed. Zakdumar, so it was changed from Ivris to Ashuris. Lama Nikra Ashur. So why is it called Ashur? Shalom Yom Mi Ashur. It came from, I guess, from Syria. Ashur is near Bavel, which is Iraq. Iraq and Syria are adjoining. Tanya, Rebbe Aimer V'tchil B'ksav Ze Nitna Torah L'Yisrael. Rebbe has a different shita. He says, so we saw so far, right, so we said so far Rabbi Yossi, who says it started as Ksav Ivri, the Lashon HaKodesh. It went to Ksav Ashuris, and it stayed as Ksav Ashuris, but when they went to Bavel, it changed to Lashon Arami. When they came back to Eretz Yisrael, they brought it to the current form of Ksav Ashuris and Lashon HaKodesh. Rebbe, I'm B'tchila B'ksav Ze Nitna Torah L'Yisrael. Really, at the beginning, it was given as Ksav Ashuris and Lashon Kodesh. Kivan Shechatu Nabach Lahen L'Royetz. It got splintered. They didn't recall how to read it. They lost the ability to read Ksav Ashuris. Kivan Shechazu B'hen Ichziru Lem. But when they came back to Eretz Yisrael, after they went to Bavel, they remembered once again how to read the Ksav Ashuris. Nema Shuvu Libitzurin, come back to Bitzurin, to your Ba'itzer, to your strong place. Asire Atikva, those who are captured in hope. Gama Yaim Magad Mishnah Ashevlach. Even today, I'm going to return that which was changed. So we said that Mishnah Torah means that the lashon of Torah is changed, When they came back to Eretz Yisrael, they regained the ability to understand it. La Manikra Shema Ashuris, he says a different shot in Ashuris. He says it's not that it came from Ashuris, Shemu Sheres Biksav, that it has, it's the best of all the different Lashonis. It's the most elegant. So that's the second shot. Reb Shimon ben Elazar, Aimim Mishum Eliezer ben Prata, Sham Mishum Reb Elazar Hamudai, Ksav Zela Nishtana Kolika. Says no, the Ksav never changed. Shenema Vave Hamudim. It says by the Mishkan that there were I don't know, you call them, there were stands to hold up the curtains, and they're called Vave. Vav is our letter Vav, which is a stick with a little thing hanging over, with a little overhang, and that's what they hung the curtains from. So Ma Amudim Lenishtanu, just like that's what they would call Vavim, so they used the letter Vav, which is a Ksav Ashuris, not the other language, the Ksav Ivris, which had a different letter for it. Avavim Lenishtanu. So too, our Vavim never changed. There always was a Ksav Ashuris. In addition, it says, it says in the Megillah that the Yidden, they sent out letters and the Ksavim and Elshainam, just like the language never changed, it was always Lashon HaKodesh, so too, the script never changed. We said Mishnah Torah, according to the other Pshat, according to Rabbi Yossi, means that the Lashon changed, L'shteira Torahs. It's coming to tell you that there's two Torahs, like we said before, that the the Melech has to take two Torahs. Like we said, this was in the parentheses earlier, that he carries it around with him. He makes it like a small amulet and he carries it. What does he do with Shavisi Hashem L'negdi Tamid? Since he doesn't hold that the Mishnah Torah, the original Rabbi Yossi would not hold that Mishnah Torah means a double, means two Sifrei Torah. Rather, it means that the lashon of the script of the Sefer Torah changed. Someone who's davening has to look at it as if the Shekhinah is opposite him. The Shimon the Amma Ksav Zela Nishtana, according to Rav Shimon, who says that the Rav Shimon ben Elazar, who said that the Ksav never changed. My loikaholin kisva lemikra, that the writing on the wall, they weren't able to read it. Amarav begematria. It was written in a gematria, meaning Rashi says shat bas, what does it go? At bash, where you interpose, every aleph becomes a saf and a beis becomes a shin and so on. So you switch the letters in that way, and yes, it was written yatas idach pugchamet. My parashlu, and what does it mean? Mana takalu parson. What it really means is, it means that mana laka machusach. The Rebbeinu Shalom is going to take away from you your melucha. Takal takilta b'maznaya v'shtachas chaser. You were weighed on the scale and you were found to be missing. Prisa malchusa parson, the last word, right? Prisa malchusach yavas lamada yaparis, and your kingdom is going to be split up and given to Mada Yaparis. That was the message. Ushmul Amma Mamtas Nakfi Alarim. He learns it that it was they had all the letters that he said mana. I'm sorry, those were the letters that he got. The real message was mana takalu parson, but he just put it into a different order so that it had to be decoded. Rabbi Yochanan Amar anim lokas nisravu. He said he just wrote it backwards. If you switch that around, it's mana takal uparson. Rashi Amar nama katal person. He says that they wrote it all correctly, but the first letters were just changed around. So it's really mana mana takal uprasin. One of these pshatim where we're just switched around the letters. There's a whole cryptography way you make it into a square and it lines up the letters and you switch them around like that. Okay, Zot the Mishnah. Ein roichem al susay. You're not allowed to ride on the king's horse. Ein yoshven al kisay. You can't sit on his chair. Ein mishtamshim b'shar bitay. You can't use his scepter, and as we're going to see in the Gemara, that means you can't use anything that belongs to the king. Ve'ein roiner shu mistaper. You can't watch him while he's getting a haircut. V'leik shu aram. Not when he's undressed. V'leik shu b'beis hamechatz. Not when he's in the wash house, shenema, in the bathhouse, shenema, shlem tasim alecha melech, shetehei masa alecha. He has to have fear. You have to remain in fear of him. Amar Rav Yaakov Rav Yochanan, Avishag mutar shloshayma v'ashur la'adiniya. Avishag, who was, as we're going to see, was used by David HaMelech. He wasn't married to her, but she was basically his servant. She was mutter to Shlomo, because Shlomo was also a king. So something that's used by one king can be used by another king, but not by a commoner. But Adiniyah, who was Shlomo's brother, but who wasn't a king, she was Asata. A melech, this din that we said in the Mishnah that you can't use the belongings of a king, it's only a commoner, but a melech it's allowed to use it. Basur Adiniyah, they had you to. He was Asata Adiniyah because Adiniyah was a headya. Avishag Mahi, what was Avishag's status? David Zakim Baba Yamim, he got old. Vayermulu Avadav, Yivakshu, they should search out a girl to help him out. Yivakshu Nara Yafa, they found a beautiful girl. Nara Yafa Admaoit, she was very beautiful. Vatia Melech Sekenes, Lamelech Sekenes, she would assist him, Vatishaseyu, and she was a servant. Amra Ninsavin. He said, "Let me marry you." She said, "Why don't you marry me?" Amalah, seriously, you also to me, because he already had 18 wives. He wasn't allowed to exceed the amount. Amalei, chasrei, leganva nafshe, l'shalmanakit. She said to him, a thief, when a thief is missing, he doesn't have opportunities. Then all of a sudden he becomes a gresed tzaddik, right? A thief, when he knows he's going to get caught, he becomes I don't believe in sins. He said the same thing. You don't want to marry me, so all of a sudden you're becoming very frum about that. You can't exceed 18 wives. Amlahu karoli l'basheva. So he said and what she really meant was that in this case, said you're not able to marry me because you're not able to be with a woman. You're too old, and therefore you're giving excuses why you don't want to marry me. Amlu karoli l'basheva, call me my wife Batsheva. Uksiv atave Batsheva lamelech achadara. They brought him into a room. Amar Rav Yehuda Amarav ba'isasha kincha Batsheva b'shalosh esrei mapes. She had to be. He was born her 13 times. She had to be cleaned off with 13 cloths. Amar Sham Barava. So he showed her that it wasn't the lack of vigorousness that he wasn't married. The reason was not because of vigorousness, but it was because he really didn't want to marry an additional wife. Amar of Shambarabba, a kamakoshin gerushin. How difficult gerushin is, how much a person should avoid divorce. David HaMelech tir lo yachid. Really, Avishag was a psula, and like we said before on the previous blot, yichud with a psula is also. But in order for her to assist him, they had to be mater yichud. And even so, even though he had an eitzah, he could have divorced one of his wives and married Avishag, then it would be mutter. They were mater yichud rather than allowing David to divorce a wife. The famous Gemara, when someone divorces his first wife, even the Mizbeach cries, Shnema v'zoy shenis tasu, sus dima es Mizbeach Hashem bechi v'anaka. Let me see what the pasuk is. This is so small. The Zoy Shane is Tasso, this you should additionally do. Kasas Dimas, Mizbeach Hashem, Bechi Venaka, should cover with tears the Mizbeach Hashem. I'm not going to want to take your what you give me, what you put onto the mizbeach. Uksiv, v'amartem alma. Why is Hashem saying this? Al ki Hashem heyed beincho bein eshes nurecha. Asher ata bagadet toba v'hi chavrecha v'eshes brisecha. Because what this really means is he's saying that the Rebbeinu Hashem saying you're leaving the ways of Hashem, but the actual language is saying is that because you were megarish to your wife that you originally married, your original wife. A person's wife doesn't die, except for when if people are coming after him for money and he owes them the money, he stole the money from them and he has to pay it back, and he can't pay it back, that causes his wife to die. If you can't pay, why should I take mishkavecha, meaning your wife, the one you lay with, from underneath you? If you're not going to pay back, then that's going to result that you're not going to, your wife is going to go away. Any widower who loses his wife, it's as if the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed in his days. I'm taking away that which is pressing your eyes. You shouldn't mourn it. You shouldn't cry. You shouldn't give out tears. I spoke to the nation in the morning, and his wife died ba'erev. So, we call the mikdash machmar einechem, the same way we said about the wife, the Eshes Nurayim. Rebbe Alexandra, kol adam shemeisa ishta biyamav, any man whose wife dies while he's alive, olam choshech ba'adai, the world becomes dark. Shenemar or choshech ba'alai, the darkness is in his tent. V'nera olav yadacha, v'naru olav yadacha, and it went out that desire that you had, I think. His steps become shorter, meaning he becomes weakened. It takes away the strength. Aina is his strength. He loses the ability to give good advice. His wisdom goes away. It's as difficult to make a match as it is to split the sea. The Rebbeinu Shalom puts those who are single in the house. He takes out those who are trapped from bekaishrus. Zaktamara. I'll take you mighty asirim, I'll take you kaishrus, Ella Bachi Veshiris. With Bechi Veshiris, and Bechi Veshiris is a reference to Kriyas Yamsuf, when the Mitzrayim were crying and the Yidden was singing Shir. In fact, the Mar'ini v'Amar of Yehuda Marav, Aravim Kadni Tzias Avlad, Baskol Yitzas, V'Amar Bas Plainim Plaini. We already know who's going to be married, so what's so difficult about making a Shadach? Lekasha Hab Zivik Rishon, Hab Zivik Sheni. Einachanami, the Zivik Rishon is written at the beginning. The Zivik Sheni is very difficult. Amar Shul Bar Nachman, L'chol Yesh Tmura Chutz Me'eshin Surayim. There's a replacement to everything except for the first, the person, the one the person marries when he's young. Shenema Be'eshin Rayim Ki Timas. When the daughter of your, the wife of your later of your childhood, Timos, it's key Timos. Can you get rid of her? Masila Yehuda Rav Yitzchak Brei. Ain't the Moitze Koresh Ruachal Mishter Rishayna. The only place a person finds peace is from his life. Shenemi Yihi Mekarcha Baruch V'Sameach Me'eches Nurayach. You should be blessed. Your Ma'ayin, your spring should be blessed, and you should be Sameach with the wife of your childhood. Amalach Kagain Man. He said to him, "Who is that like? Amalach Kagain Imcha, like your mother. That I have a wonderful marriage." Any V'Hamikri Le Rav Yehuda Rav Yitzchak Brei. He said, I find my wife worse. A woman is worse than death, that she traps me with her snares. Who is that referring to? That's your mother. Your mother is Isha Marmi Mava. So how could he say that beforehand that the only simcha is with Eishes Nurayach? So I'm not sure why the Gemara didn't just say maybe he was born from a Zivig Sheni. But again, no, because we said Imach. He said it was your mother, so I guess it can't be. So the Gemara, Mitkef Kifa Ivura Ma'avra B'Mila. My answer is that no, she was a tough person. Mitka, she was a takef, but she also had a soft side. So when she was being tough, she was very tough. But Lamaisa, in the end, he was very similar. He was happy with her because her soft side made it all worth. Amar Shmuel Bar Unya Mishmei the Rav Isha Goylam. A woman is a blank form. Be'ena Karas bris Elamisha Asa Kli, and she only makes a true bond with the person who makes her into a Kli. Meaning, when she's a psula and a man is born for the first time, that makes it an unbreakable bond. Shenema Kebalecha Asa Hashem Tzavakish Shmoi. This is talking about the metaphor of the Bnei Shalom is as if he's marrying the Bnei Yisrael, and it says Hashem makes the Bnei Yisrael. Tana ein ish meis ela ishtoi. A man doesn't die except for to his wife. Ein ish meis ela baila. Ein ish meis ela ishtoi. Shenema vayamas Elimelech ish Naomi. He was Elimelech, the wife who was the husband of Naomi, and that's how he's called Ish Naomi. When he dies, that's the person who really feels it. It says about Yaakov that Rachel died to him. He was the one who really suffered. Shkayach, sorry for going a little over.